And welcome back to another Econ podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this Econ podcast, we're going to continue working with Comparative Advantage. On the last podcast on Comparative Advantage, we did an example where I gave an example of having two sweaters and 8 chairs produced by person A, or 3 sweaters and 15 chairs by person B. And what's important about that is that I was saying that this would be the level of production per day. So I'm giving you the number of units they can produce per day, per time period. But now we're going to change things on this podcast, on this example. And this time we're going to look at how many hours does it take to produce a unit of a good. And that reverses the way that we think about things. So how many hours does it take to produce 1 unit of the good? So if you get a problem like this, then you have to change your thinking on this. So first of all, let's look at absolute advantage and talk about how we would have to change our thinking. When I think about absolute advantage, I would now have to say, who has the absolute advantage for the production of sweaters? Well, A can make 15 sweaters in an hour. Sorry, that's the wrong way to think about it. It takes them 15 hours to make 1 sweater. B can make 12 sweaters in an hour? No, it takes 12 hours for B to make 1 sweater. So we would say, even though B has the smaller number, we would say that B has the absolute advantage for making sweaters. Why? Because it only takes him 12 hours to make a sweater. It takes A 15 hours to make a sweater. So B can make sweaters faster than A can. Okay, how about chairs? It takes B 36 hours to make a chair. It only takes A 30 hours to make a chair. So we would say that A has the absolute advantage producing chairs. Now, let's do the comparative advantage, the lowest opportunity cost, comparative advantage, specialization questions. So to do that, we now have to reverse what we were doing before. The rule that we talked about before said that you want the good that you're analyzing to be in the denominator and equal to 1. And we still want that, but we want that at the end. But to start with, we're going to have to switch it. So let's begin by looking at sweaters. So we're going to begin by looking at sweaters, and we're going to start with person A. So we're going to analyze person A making sweaters. Now, at the end, I want sweaters in the denominator over 1. But I'm going to start with sweaters in the numerator. Hear that very clearly. If I'm looking at the number of hours that it takes, the amount of time it takes to produce a unit of the good, then I need to start with the good that I'm analyzing in the numerator and let it work its way down to the denominator. So here's what I mean by that. Sweaters, it takes, here's the way you would record it. You would say it takes 15 hours for A to produce 1 sweater. And it takes them 30 hours to produce 1 chair. So again, the good that we are analyzing, sweaters, is starting here in the numerator, but it's going to work its way down to the denominator as soon as I multiply by the reciprocal. So I multiply by the reciprocal and I get 15 hours over 1 sweater times 1 chair over 30 hours. Then I'm just doing math. Right? So then I'm going to cross hours, are going to cross out, and so that's going to leave me with 15 chairs over 30 sweaters, and that's going to mean 0.5 chairs over 1 sweater. So verbally what that means is that every time that A produces a sweater, he gives up half a chair. Okay? So listen to that one more time. I want the good that we're producing to be in the denominator and equal to 1, but I have to start with it in the numerator and let it work its way down to the denominator as I multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? So let me go through the rest of these a little faster. Let's look at sweaters for B. So sweaters for person B. And now let's see, we want sweaters in the numerator, so it's going to be 12 hours it takes B to make one sweater, all divided by it takes 36 hours for B to make one chair, multiplied by the reciprocal, and I'm going to get 12 hours over one sweater multiplied by one chair over 36 hours. And then, of course, we're going to, just like we did up top, we're going to cross out the hours. Hours are going to disappear. They're going to cross out. So I'm going to end up with 12 chairs divided by 36 sweaters. And so then that's going to be, let's see, 12 divided by 36. That's going to be 0.33 chairs over one sweater. 0.33 chairs over one sweater. So who has the comparative advantage producing sweaters? We would say person B. When person B produces a sweater, he only gives up a third of a chair. When person A produces a sweater, he gives up half a chair. Okay, so let's do this again now for chairs. And this is going to be person A. So now we're producing chairs, so we're going to start with that in the numerator and let it work its way down to the denominator. So let's see, to start in the numerator, we're going to say it takes A 30 hours to make one chair, all divided by 15 hours to make one sweater, multiplied by the reciprocal, so I get 30 hours over one chair times one sweater over 15 hours, and then divide that out. The hours are going to cross, and I'm going to be left with 30 sweaters over 15 chairs, which is going to be, 2 sweaters over one chair. Every time that A makes a chair, he gives up a sweater. Let's do the same. He gives up 2 sweaters. Every time A makes a chair, he gives up 2 sweaters. Let's do the same thing for B. Chairs for person B. And now person B, it takes 36 hours to make one chair, all divided by, it takes 12 hours, takes him 12 hours to make one sweater. And then, let's see, that's going to be multiplied by the reciprocal. I'm going to get 36 hours, all divided by one chair, times one sweater over 12 hours. Hours, again, are going to cross, so they're going to disappear. And that leaves me with 36 sweaters over 12 chairs, which is 3 sweaters over one chair. And so then we say, who has the comparative advantage? Well, every time A produces a chair, he gives up 2 sweaters. When B produces a chair, he gives up 3 sweaters. So A has the comparative advantage producing chairs. So let's record that all down here. The lowest opportunity cost producer of sweaters was person B. And that also means the person B will have the comparative advantage, which means the person B will specialize in the production of sweaters. And then A will have the lowest opportunity cost of producing chairs, and therefore he has a comparative advantage in producing chairs, and therefore he will specialize in the production of chairs. So you just got to remember, if you are given the number of hours it takes to produce the good, then you got to switch things up at the beginning. So if you need to, re-watch these 2 videos, the 2 videos, Comparative Advantage 1 and Comparative Advantage 2, takes you through the 2 possible ways to do the comparative advantage problems, the 2 possible ways to set them up. Hope that makes it a little bit more understandable. This has been Mr. Hagan on another Econ podcast. We will see you on the next podcast.